In this video, we're going to talk about what courage is, why it is important, and how to cultivate it. Before I begin, I want to first clarify what courage is not. Courage is not a lack of fear. Living without fear is not human, and it is dangerous to oneself and others around you. In history, examples in the past, if you were to live without fear, you would die very, very quickly. Nowadays, we're more civilized, but even today, living without fear could get you into serious trouble with the law, with yourself, and even still possibly bodily harm. So, living without fear is not courage, and it is to be avoided at all costs. Now, there are many different definitions of courage in the Oxford English Dictionary, such as the heart as a seat of feeling, thought, etc., or spirit, liveliness, lustiness, vigor, vital force, or energy, or confidence and boldness. Now, while all of these are important in knowing what courage is, the most important definition, in my opinion, about the courage in its general sense is that quality of mind which shows itself in facing danger without fear or shrinking. Bravery, boldness, valor. Now, a quote from Nelson Mandela, who you all probably know, but just some of you, if you don't, he was a politician in South Africa who fought against apartheid government and was in prison for 27 years because of it, but his actions eventually led to the destruction of the apartheid government in South Africa. And his quote about courage is, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." And here's a clip of Morgan Freeman talking about courage, and if he says it, then it must be true.
Courage. Courage is the key to life itself.
There you go. Morgan Freeman. Now, what does he mean when he says courage is the key to life itself? Well, I read a book for art class this year by Rollo May, and he is a 20th century existential psychologist. And the book I read was The Courage to Create. And in it, he writes, "The word courage comes from the same stem as the French word cœur, meaning heart. Thus, just as one's heart, by pumping blood to one's arms, legs, and brain, enable all other physical organs to function, so courage makes possible all the psychological virtues. Without courage, other values wither away into mere facsimiles of virtues." And to summarize that, it is that courage allows one to act out almost every single other virtue that there is. Without it, you wouldn't be able to do anything because you'd be afraid, or even if you were afraid, you would not do any of those virtues because you would be a fear of coming off as too nice, coming off as too mean. Whatever you do, you'll be afraid of something, and without courage, you can't commit to anything. And according to Rollo May, commitment is what separates us from all other things in nature. Just as say an acorn, which all its job is to just be and eventually come into an oak out of automatic growth. It doesn't have to try to do anything. It doesn't have to put itself into a tough situation. It just lives. It just falls on the ground and becomes the oak. So, an example of courage. This would be more social courage. We'll get to that in a second. Example of courage would be, say, if someone sees a kid being bullied at school, a person wants to help the person being bullied, but they are afraid that if they stand up to the bully, they could lose popularity, or even incur the hatred of said bully. Despite their fear, that person stands up for the bullied student because it is what they believe is the right thing to do. And that person was afraid of losing popularity or making an enemy, but their courage told them to do the right thing and stand up for the defenseless kid despite their fear. Now, courage comes in many different forms, and we'll get to that in a second. But but it doesn't quite have to be physical courage, which is the courage of being brave against obvious danger. This courage is courage where the student stood up against something. So the danger wasn't physical, but emotional. And as I say here, physical is bravery towards physical pain. Then there's moral courage. Moral courage is doing the right thing despite what other people might say. Example, someone tells you that your beliefs are wrong or stupid, something along those lines, and you stand up to them and you stay true to what you believe in despite other outside influence to telling you to not believe what you believe. And the last, and these are the three most important types of courage. There are others, but they can generally fall under these categories. But the last one would be social courage, which would be a mix of that and moral, which was used in the last example. But so social courage is risk of embarrassment or rejection, and that would be having to make a tough decision, say, that tends people to not like you, at least at that time. Or it could be asking someone out on a date. In each situation, your actions could cause people to possibly not like you, and that sucks. Everyone understands that people want to be liked, but at the same time, certain things need to be done. And if you wanted to, say, ask a girl out on a date, you couldn't do that without courage. Just a quick little information here. A vice or deficit of courage would be cowardice, and cowardice would keep you from doing anything. It would always keep you playing safe, and that would never get you anywhere in life. But the vice of excess, which is too much courage, would be rashness, and that would be where there would be too much courage and you wouldn't think things through. That would be almost living without fear. Maybe not to that extent, but it tends to have bad results, as cowardice tends to have no results. Courage is the middle ground where you will have bad outcomes at times, but you also have good outcomes. And cowardice and rashness are the extremes of that. Now, a couple intrinsic goods or ills of courage be confidence or steadfastness. You can't have courage without confidence, or confidence without courage. Because without confidence, courage can exist, because courage is belief in yourself that you can do something in the sense that you can do something against what other people are telling you to do or telling you to believe. And you can't have confidence without having courage, because without courage, the confidence is pointless. There is no reason to have confidence if you're never going to apply it. Something with steadfastness, that is with your beliefs. If you believe something, then if you stay true to that, you will have courage by just time and people eventually coming into contact with somebody and then telling you that your beliefs are wrong. Now, on the opposite spectrum of that, opposite end of the spectrum would be lack of confidence or irresoluteness, and that is where you don't have the confidence to do anything, and you therefore do not ever try to do anything new or take a risk, and you are stuck in limbo of nothingness, or if you say also irresoluteness, where you don't stay true to your beliefs and you are just a opinionless sack of meat that has no autonomy. You just go with what the society or people you know tell you to believe, and you don't get to grow as a human, or you don't get to build a center of identity to yourself. Now, some leadership skills that require courage often require social courage, but they also do involve moral courage. Now, one example of physical courage in leadership would be lack of sleep or if you are sick, but that is generally the only type of physical courage you will ever have to enact in leadership. But some examples of leadership skills requiring courage are decision-making, innovating, being yourself, taking risks, seeking feedback, tolerating discomfort, giving opportunities to others, challenging your boss, and not giving up. Now, some of these, like decision-making and taking risks, are quite evident as to how courage is necessary. But being yourself and others of that sort, I'll tell you why you need courage. Being yourself, just like with more on social courage, if you aren't yourself, then you have no autonomy and you have no purpose in this world, because you are just spitting out what you hear, and anyone can hear that information from the general society or the group in which you are a part of. But being yourself takes courage to go against the grain. And seeking feedback and tolerating discomfort, generally the same thing, but because feedback can be discomfort. And discomfort it's tough, but that feeling is necessary to get things accomplished, because that could be stress. It could be simply you not liking what you're working on at the time and you realizing that you need to change it. Giving opportunities to others, that would be giving up yourself, giving up your success to others because you know it's the right thing to do. And also it would help the group to divide up the labor or give other people chances to shine for themselves. Challenging your boss would be moral and social courage, because what you believe, because you know that it's not a good decision to challenge your boss because they could get mad and possibly fire you, or maybe eventually they could not like you as much, and that could lead to you being fired or not getting that raise you want, a promotion. But sometimes this is for the best, and they might realize that you have guts and take risks, and that if you're right, then sometimes this will result in you being liked 10 times more than you would have been disliked by your boss if you told them that they were wrong. And lastly, not giving up. That is important because you, of course, just resoluteness. You need courage to keep going when things get tough. Now, some ways to cultivate courage are trying new food, talking to someone you don't know, asking someone out on a date, standing up for your beliefs. Pretty much any situation that you use courage builds courage. Successfully using courage builds confidence. Confidence will then let you be a little bit more courageous in the future. The cycle continues until you eventually have a lot of courage built up, and then that will lead to more confidence, and the cycle will continue and continue until you have a lot of courage. And lastly, a couple of examples maybe you could follow or look at of courage. Galileo Galilei, he was an astronomer who, despite the Roman Catholic Church at the time, he opposed their view of the geocentric universe, and he was a big advocate of the heliocentric universe and the elliptical orbits around the sun and the moon around the earth, just like Kepler and Copernicus had also introduced. And because he did not back down to the Catholic Church, he was imprisoned for life. But eventually, his contributions to science lended amazing results and set the foundation for so many other discoveries. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood up for his belief in equal rights despite the color of one's skin or their race. And because of this, he was assassinated. But despite his assassination, his beliefs and his words continue to live on to this day. Rosa Parks is a classic example of someone standing up to racial injustice, as she wasn't quite the first person to do this, but she was one of the more popular and more famous cases of this, is where she, instead of going to the colored section of a bus, which is the back of the bus, which is crowded and often not as good seating as the front bus, which is held for white people, she sat down in the front and refused to stand up until cops arrived and took her out of the bus. Now, Joan of Arc, she was a French girl who eventually, even in her youth, she heard the words of God. I'm not sure if it was words of God, but she heard words in her head from Saint Margaret and others telling her to try and take back France from England, and she did, and she eventually tried to take it back, and she rose in the ranks and was a very important figure in that war between the two countries, but she was eventually captured by England and tried for witchcraft and cross-dressing, which in England she was prosecuted for and then she was burned at the stake. But despite that, she is a powerful figure for women, and saying that just because you're a woman does not mean you can't help out a cause that you really feel like it is necessary to help out with. That would be social courage and moral courage. And lastly, a very recent person that could be an example of courage would be Malala Yousafzai. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, forgive me, but she, despite the Taliban's orders to her to stop educating girls and become educated, she continued on, and she was then harmed by the Taliban. I'm not sure how, but she was greatly harmed by them physically. And that would be physical courage. And she is now a major figure for the Middle East and empowerment of women, and a proponent for